AITA for evicting my dad's wife and kids from my house after years of being their maid? My name's Ethan Carter. I'm 19 now, sitting in a dorm room 1,000 miles from the house I grew up in. But let me take you back to where it all started. That house, it wasn't just walls and a roof to me. It was my whole world, handed down from my mom's folks, built with their hands and filled with their lives. It's got these old oak floors that groan when you step on them, windows that rattle in the wind, and a porch swing that's been there since before I was born. Growing up, it smelled like cedar and my mom's cooking pot roast mostly, with that rich, warm scent that'd hit you the second you walked in. But that was a long time ago. Mom died when I was 5, cancer taking her quick and quiet, leaving me and Dad alone in a place that felt too big without her. Dad tried. Man, he really did. He'd work his factory job, come home beat, and still make sure I had dinner, usually something simple like spaghetti or grilled cheese. But I'd catch him sometimes, sitting in the dark, staring at Mom's old rocking chair in the living room, like he was waiting for her to come back. He didn't talk about her much, but her stuff stayed, pictures on the mantle, her recipe box in the kitchen, little pieces of her everywhere. The house was ours, sure, but it was really hers, passed to me through her parents' will. I didn't know that back then. I was just a kid, rattling around with Dad, trying to figure out life without her. Things held steady until I hit 15. That's when Dad came home one night acting weird. He was fidgeting with his ball cap, something he only did when he was nervous, and he sat me down at the kitchen table. "Ethan," he said, his voice low, "I got someone I want you to meet." Before I could even process it, the screen door banged open, and in walked Diane. She was short, brunette, with this loud laugh that bounced off the walls. She carried herself like she owned every room she stepped into, and her perfume, some heavy floral thing, hit me like a truck. Behind her were two shadows, her kids, Travis and Haley. "This is Travis," Diane said, waving at the guy, maybe 20, lanky, with his nose buried in his phone. "He's at community college. And this is Haley." She nodded at the girl, 16, my age, with sharp eyes and a grin that didn't feel friendly. "She's in your grade, Ethan." Travis didn't look up, just grunted. Haley, though, she locked eyes with me, sizing me up like I was some stray dog she didn't trust. I mumbled a hey, but my gut was already twisting. Something about them felt off. That night, while Dad and Diane laughed over coffee in the living room, Haley found me in the hall. She leaned against the wall, arms crossed, and said, "Look, just 'cause our parents are a thing doesn't mean we're buddies. I don't need a new brother, and you don't need me. Let's stay out of each other's way." Her voice was cold, like she'd already decided I was nothing. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded, feeling the air shift in my own house. 6 months later, Dad married Diane. Just like that, they moved in. Travis took the spare room upstairs, Haley claimed the den, and Diane's stuff spread like wildfire. Mom's pictures got shoved into a closet, replaced by Diane's tacky glass figurines and photos of her kids grinning at some beach I'd never been to. The bathroom turned into a nightmare, Diane's makeup everywhere, Haley hogging it for hours doing her hair. I started setting my alarm early just to brush my teeth before school, but I kept my mouth shut. Dad was smiling again, whistling while he flipped pancakes, coming home on time instead of working late. I hadn't seen him like that since Mom, so I figured I could deal. Then Dad got a big break, shift supervisor at the plant. More money, sure, but it meant he'd be gone a lot, driving across 3 states to check sites. "It's a good thing, Ethan," he said at dinner, beaming. Diane clapped her hands, talking about redoing the garage, maybe getting a hot tub. I just heard "gone a lot," and felt the floor drop out from under me. A week later, he left on his first trip, and the second his truck was out of sight, Diane turned into someone else. Her smile vanished, and she sat me down with this hard look. "Ethan, we're laying down some rules now," she said, her voice like steel. "This house doesn't run itself." That's when the chores started. Dishes, vacuuming, mowing the lawn, stuff I'd done before, but now it was every day, no breaks. Diane said Travis was focusing on school and Haley had extracurriculars, so it all fell on me. I'd get home from football practice, bone-tired, and find a list waiting, clean the gutters, scrub the stove, take out the trash. Travis would be sprawled on the couch, gaming, while Haley painted her nails and ignored me. I'd bite my tongue, thinking about Dad's smile, but it was getting harder to keep quiet. One night, I was up to my elbows in dishwater when I couldn't take it anymore. "Why am I the only one doing this?" I asked, loud enough for Diane to hear from the recliner. She looked up from her book, eyes narrowing. "Travis and Haley have their own stuff going on. Someone's got to keep this place together." I glanced at Haley, who was texting 2 feet away, and laughed, a short, pissed-off sound. "Yeah, they look real busy." Diane's face went tight. "Watch your tone, Ethan. I'm not here to be disrespected." I wanted to yell, but I just turned back to the sink. After that night at the sink, things didn't let up. If anything, they got worse. Diane's rules turned into a full-on chore dictatorship. I'd stumble in from school, football cleats still muddy, backpack dragging me down, and she'd be waiting with a list. "Ethan, the garage needs sweeping." "Ethan, the trash is overflowing." "Ethan, why is the fridge such a mess?" "No, how was your day?" "No, good job at practice." Just orders, barked out like I was her personal handyman. Travis didn't lift a finger. Guy was 20, supposed to be at community college, but I'd catch him napping on the couch or yelling at his video games half the day. Haley was no better, 16, same as me, but she acted like she was royalty. She'd breeze through the kitchen, grab a soda, and leave the can on the counter for me to deal with while she FaceTimed her friends about some party I wasn't invited to. I'd be on my knees scrubbing baseboards, and she'd step over me like I was furniture. Move, she'd say, not even looking down. It burned me up, but I kept my head down. Dad was happy, I told myself. That's what mattered. Except it didn't feel like it mattered anymore. When Dad called home, Diane put on the show, voice all sweet and tired, like she'd been slaving away. "Oh, Tom, it's been rough keeping everything together," she'd say, sighing into the phone. "The kids are a handful, and this house, it's a lot." Meanwhile, I'm in the background, hands cracked from bleach, hauling laundry downstairs, and she's sipping tea like a damn queen. Dad'd eat it up, too. "You're a saint, Diane," he'd say, voice soft. "I don't know how you do it." Then he'd show up after a trip with gifts, fancy scarves, earrings, once even a leather jacket. For her, always for her. Me? I got a pat on the shoulder and to keep up the good work. But I started noticing how invisible I was. Travis leave his muddy boots by the door, my job to clean. Haley trashed the bathroom with her hair dye experiments, my job to scrub. Diane complain about the yard. Guess who got the mower? I'd be dead on my feet, homework piling up, but if I slacked, Diane lay into me. "We all pitch in, Ethan," she'd say, like it wasn't a lie. One time, I snapped. It was late. I just mowed the lawn in the rain, and Travis was sprawled out playing Call of Duty. "Hey, man, how about you help for once?" I said, dripping wet in the doorway. He didn't even look up. "Not my problem, dude." Diane overheard and stormed in. "Ethan, don't start trouble. Travis has midterms." Midterms, my ass. He hadn't cracked a book in weeks. That's when it hit me. They didn't see me. Not as a person, anyway. I was the grunt, the one who kept their little kingdom running while they lounged. And Dad, he was too busy or too blind to notice. I'd hear Diane on the phone with him sometimes, playing the martyr. "Ethan's been moody, Tom. I'm trying so hard to make this work." She'd twist it so I was the problem, and he'd buy it every time. I'd stand there, fist clenched, wanting to scream, but who'd listen? Then came the big one. I was 18, senior year, busting my tail at school and practice, when Diane dropped a bomb. We're at dinner, me, her, Travis, Haley, eating some dried chicken I'd cooked, 'cause she didn't feel like it. She puts down her fork, smiles this thin, fake smile, and says, "Ethan, now that you're an adult, it's time you paid rent. Let's say $400 a month." I damn near dropped my plate. "Rent? I'm still in high school." She didn't blink. "We've got expenses. Everyone's got a chip in." I looked at Travis, chowing down like nothing's wrong, and Haley, smirking into her mashed potatoes. "They paying too?" I asked, voice tight. Diane waved a hand. "They're still getting settled. You're the man of the house now, right?" I couldn't believe it. Man of the house? I'd been their maid for years, and now I'm supposed to pay to live in my own damn home? Something clicked then, this cold, clear feeling washing over me. "No," I said, flat and hard. Diane's smile froze. "What did you say?" I stood up, chair scraping the floor. I said, "No. This ain't your house, Diane. It's mine." Her eyes went wide, then she laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "Yours? That's a good one." I didn't budge. Grandma and Grandpa left it to me. Check the will if you don't believe me. The room went dead quiet. Travis actually looked up from his food. Haley's smirk vanished. Diane's face twitched, like she was trying to figure out how to spin this. She grabbed her phone, dialed Dad, and put it on speaker. "Tom," she snapped when he picked up, "Ethan's saying the house is his. Tell me that's not true." There was a long pause, too long. Then Dad's voice came through, rough and low. "Well, it is, Diane. It's in his name." Her jaw dropped. She hung up fast, slamming the phone down so hard it skidded across the table. "Fine," she hissed, forcing that smile back. "No rent then. Let's not fight over it." But her eyes, they were burning. I knew she wasn't done with me. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding. The house was mine, legally, fully mine. But I heard Diane through the wall, whispering to Dad on the phone. "Tom, he can't stay. He's making this impossible. We need him out college, somewhere far. He's 18. He doesn't need to be here." Dad mumbled something I couldn't catch, then said, "Maybe you're right." My stomach sank. My own dad, ready to ditch me to keep her happy. I clenched the blanket, anger boiling up. If they wanted a war, they'd get one. I wasn't going anywhere, not YET.my on father, picking her over me after everything I'd put up with. The next morning, Diane acted like we were all one big happy family again. She's in the kitchen, humming some tune, pouring orange juice like she's auditioning for a TV mom role. "Morning, Ethan," she chirped, all bright and cheery. "Want some eggs?" I just stared at her, my jaw tight, then grabbed a granola bar and walked out. I wasn't playing her game. Travis was slumped at the table, scrolling his phone, and Haley was upstairs blasting music loud enough to wake the dead. Same old crap, me doing the heavy lifting while they coasted. But now I knew the truth. This was my house, my rules. I just had to figure out how to take it back. School that day was a blur. Football practice too, just me running drills, slamming into tackling dummies, trying to burn off the fire in my gut. When I got home, The place was a mess. Dishes piled up, trash spilling over, muddy footprints from Travis's boots all over the floor. Diane was on the couch with a glass of wine, flipping through a magazine. "Ethan, can you tidy up a bit?" she said, not even looking at me. "It's been a long day." I dropped my bag, loud enough to make her jump, and said, "Nah, I'm good. How about Travis or Haley handle it?" Her head snapped up, eyes narrowing. "They've got their own stuff. Don't be selfish." Selfish. That word hit me like a punch. I laughed, short and bitter, and walked away. That night, I made a call. My buddy Jake's uncle's a lawyer, small-time guy, does wills and stuff. I'd met him at Jake's barbecue last summer, and he'd seemed solid. I told him everything, Mom's parents leaving me the house, Diane moving in, the rent thing. "Can they make me leave?" I asked, voice low so no one'd hear. He was quiet a sec, then said, "Kid, if it's in your name, you've got the power. They're tenants, technically. You can set terms, or kick him out. Just gotta do it legal. Want me to pull the deed?" I said yeah, fast. He promised to dig into it and get back to me. For the first time in months, I felt like I had a shot. Next day, I decided to test the waters. Dinner rolls around, spaghetti I cooked, caused Diane, wasn't up to it, again, and I sat down with a plan. Everyone's eating, Travis slurping noodles like a pig, Haley texting under the table. I set my fork down, slow and deliberate, and said, "Starting next month, y'all are paying rent. For $100 each." Diane choked on her water, coughing like I'd slapped her. Travis's head jerked up, phone forgotten. Haley's mouth dropped open mid-chew. "What?" Diane sputtered, wiping her chin. "You can't be serious." I leaned back, arms crossed. "Dead serious. It's my house. You said it yourself, everyone's got a chip in." The table went silent, thick with shock. Then Diane's face twisted, that fake nice gone. "This is ridiculous, Ethan. We're family." I smirked, couldn't help it. "Funny, you didn't call me family when you wanted rent from me yesterday." Her eyes flashed, but I kept going. "Travis, you're 20, no job, living free. Haley, you're 16, but you don't do squat. I've been carrying this place. Time to step up." Travis shoved his chair back, standing fast. "You're out of your mind, man. I ain't paying you shit." Haley jumped in, voice shrill. "Yeah, who do you think you are?" Diane slammed her hand on the table, glass rattling. "Enough. Ethan, you're a kid throwing a tantrum. This isn't how family works." I stood too, meeting her glare. "You're right. Family doesn't treat each other like this. So pay up, or figure something else out." She went red, then white, like she couldn't decide whether to yell or cry. Finally, she hissed, "We'll see what your father says about this." She stormed off, phone already in hand, probably dialing Dad to spin her sob story. Sure enough, an hour later, my phone buzzed. "Dad." I picked up, bracing myself. "Ethan, what the hell's going on?" he barked, loud enough I held the phone away. "Diane says you're charging them rent? Kicking them out." I took a breath, kept my voice steady. "I ain't kicking nobody out yet. But yeah, rent. They've been living here free, Dad, while I do everything. You know the house is mine, right?" He went quiet, then sighed, heavy and tired. "Yeah, I know. But this ain't right, son. You're breaking us apart." "Breaking us apart?" I almost laughed. "Where were you when Diane tried to charge me?" "When I was cleaning up after her kids, every damn day." He didn't answer right away. Then, soft, she said, "You've been hostile. Hard to live with." Hostile. That's what she called standing up for myself. "Dad," I said, slow. "I heard you two last night. She wants me gone. Out of state. Out of the picture." "You didn't say no." Another pause, longer this time. "It's not like that, Ethan. She's just stressed." I shook my head, even though he couldn't see. "She's stressed, 'cause I'm not her servant anymore." "You picked her, Dad. Don't act like you didn't." He started to say something, but I cut him off. "Think about it. I'm done talking." I hung up, hands shaking. The house was quiet, Diane locked in her room, Travis and Haley hiding out somewhere. I sat on the porch swing, the old chains creaking, and stared at the stars. Jake's uncle'd get me the deed soon. I had leverage now, and I wasn't backing down. They wanted me out? Fine. But I'd make damn sure they felt it first. After I dropped the rent bombshell on Diane, Travis, and Haley, the air in the place turned thick, like you could cut it with a knife. Diane spent the next day slamming doors and muttering under her breath, shooting me looks that could have peeled paint off the walls. Travis kept his distance, holed up in his room with his games, and Haley, well, she just glared at me every chance she got, like I'd personally insulted her whole existence. I didn't care. I'd drawn my line in the sand, and I wasn't stepping back. A couple days later, Jake's uncle, Mr. Hargrove, called me back. I'd been waiting on pins and needles for him to dig up the deed, and when my phone lit up with his number, I ducked out to the porch to take it. "Ethan, got some good news," he said, voice gravelly but calm. "Pulled the paperwork. House is yours, no question, titled to you from your grandparents through your mom's estate. No liens, no disputes. You're the legal owner, kid." My chest loosened a bit, like I'd been holding my breath for days. "So they can't kick me out?" I asked. He chuckled. "Nope. Other way around, actually. You've got the say. They're squatters, technically, unless you let him stay. Want advice?" I nodded, then remembered he couldn't see me. "Yeah. Set terms, he said. Rent, rules, whatever. Put it in writing, nothing fancy, just clear. If they don't play ball, you can evict them. Gotta give notice, though, 30 days, state law. I can draft something if you want. I thought about it, the weight of it sinking in. Yeah, do it. Thanks, Mr. Hargrove. He grunted. No problem. Email's coming your way tomorrow. Hang tough, Ethan. I hung up, leaning back on the porch swing, the creak of it loud in the quiet night. I had the power now, real, legal power. Time to use it. Next morning, I printed out a basic version of what I wanted. Rent, for $100 each, starting next month, plus some ground rules. Clean up after yourselves, no more dumping chores on me. I kept it simple, just a page, and left copies on the kitchen table before school. When I got home, Diane was waiting, arms crossed, the paper crumpled in her fist. What's this garbage, Ethan? She snapped, shaking it at me. You think you can play landlord? I shrugged, keeping cool. Ain't playing. That's the deal. Pay up or figure something else out. House is mine, Dad told you, and I've got proof. Her face went tight, lips pressing into a thin line. Your father's gonna hear about this, she said, voice low and sharp. He's not gonna let you treat us like this. I met her stare. He can't stop me. It's legal. You don't like it, talk to him. She huffed, tossed the paper on the counter, and stormed off. I knew she'd called Dad, twisted into some big drama, but I was ready. I'd already texted him the night before, short and straight. House is mine. They pay or they go. Your call how you handle it. He hadn't replied yet. Guess he was still chewing on it. Sure enough, that evening, Dad called. I was in my room, doing math homework I'd been too pissed to focus on, when the phone buzzed. Ethan, he started, voice rough. Diane's losing her mind. Says you're pushing them out. What's this about rent? I leaned back in my chair, keeping my tone even. Told him $400 each, Dad. Fair's fair, they've been freeloading while I bust my ass. You know the house is mine. He sighed, long and heavy. Yeah, I know, but this ain't the way, son. You're tearing us up over money. I clenched my jaw. Ain't about money. It's about respect. Diane tried to charge me rent first, remember that? Where were you then? He went quiet, then muttered. She was just trying to teach you responsibility. I laughed, dry and hard. Responsibility? I've been running this place single-handed while Travis games and Haley primps. Diane's the one who don't get it. He didn't say anything for a sec. Then, she's threatening to leave, Ethan. Says she can't live like this. I felt a cold calm settle over me. Then let her. I ain't begging her to stay. His voice hardened. You'd throw away family over this? Family. That word stung, but I fired back. What family, Dad? The one that treats me like a damn maid. You chose her over me a long time ago. He didn't respond right away, just breathed into the phone, slow and heavy. I'm coming home tomorrow, he finally said. We're sorting this out. He hung up before I could say more. I tossed the phone on my bed, heart thumping. Tomorrow'd be a showdown, no doubt. Diane play the victim, Travis and Haley'd back her up, and Dad, he'd try to smooth it over like always. But I had the deed, the law, and a spine I hadn't used in years. They weren't ready for that. When Dad rolled in the next afternoon, truck rumbling up the drive, I was on the porch, waiting. He stepped out, looking worn, bags under his eyes, cap pulled low. Diane rushed out to meet him, throwing her arms around him like she'd been through a war. Tom, thank God you're here, she said, loud enough for me to hear. Ethan's lost it. He's trying to charge us rent. Dad glanced at me, then back at her. Let's go inside, he said, voice flat. We filed into the living room, me on one side, them on the other, like some messed up standoff. Dad sat down, rubbed his face, and looked at me. Ethan, explain. I didn't flinch. House is mine, Dad. Been mine since Grandma and Grandpa died. I'm done being their servant while they live free. $400 each, or they're out. Got papers coming from a lawyer to back it up. Diane cut in, voice shrill. Tom, he's bullying us. We're your family. Dad held up a hand, stopping her. Ethan, you sure about this? I nodded. Dead sure. He looked at Diane, then me, and I saw something shift in his eyes. Guilt. Maybe, or just exhaustion. All right, he said slow. We'll figure it out. But nobody's leaving tonight. Diane's jaw dropped. Travis muttered, this is bullshit. Haley just glared. I didn't care. I'd laid my cards down, and for once, Dad didn't shut me out. It wasn't a win, not yet, but it was a start. And that night after Dad got home, the tension in my house was like a storm waiting to bust loose. We'd had our little standoff in the living room, me on one side, Diane and her kids on the other, Dad stuck in the middle trying to play peacemaker. He'd said we'd figure it out, but I could tell nobody was happy. Diane's face was all pinched up, like she'd sucked a lemon, and Travis and Haley kept shooting me dirty looks. I didn't budge. I'd said my piece, for $100 each or they're out. The ball was in their court now. Next morning, Dad pulled me aside while Diane was still asleep. We're out on the porch, coffee steaming in his mug, the air cold and crisp. Ethan, he started, staring at the yard, this rent thing, it's tearing us apart. Can't you see that? I sipped my own coffee, keeping my eyes on the old oak tree Mom used to love. What I see, Dad, is me getting walked all over for years. You let Diane turn me into their errand boy. I'm done. He rubbed his neck, looking older than I'd ever seen him. I didn't know it was that bad, son. Why didn't you say something? I set my mug down, hard enough to slosh him over the edge. I tried. You were too busy buying Diane's act, her whining about how tough it is while I'm scrubbing floors. You didn't see me, Dad. His shoulders slumped, and for a second, I thought he might actually get it. Then he said, she's my wife, Ethan. I've got to stand by her. My gut twisted. Even when she's wrong. Even when she tried to charge me rent in my own house. He didn't answer, just stared at the ground. That silence said everything. Later that day, Mr. Hargrove's email came through. Official papers, all typed up nice. Notice of rent terms. For $100 per person, due first of the month, 30-day notice if they didn't comply. I printed 3 copies, signed M, and slid M under their bedroom doors, Diane and Dad's, Travis's, Haley's. No talking, no arguing, just the facts. When Diane found hers, she lost it. Came storming into the kitchen where I was eating a sandwich, waving the paper like a flag. What the hell is this, Ethan? You think you can threaten us? I swallowed my bite, calm as could be. Ain't a threat. It's the deal. Pay or pack. She threw the paper at me, it fluttered to the floor, and screamed, Tom, get in here. Dad shuffled in, looking beat. Diane, calm down, he said, but she wasn't having it. He's trying to evict us. Your own son. Dad looked at me, eyes tired. Ethan, this is too far. I stood up, meeting his gaze. Too far was letting her run me ragged while you were gone. Too far was her telling you to ship me off. I heard it, Dad. This is my house. My call. Diane's mouth snapped shut, and for once, she didn't have a comeback. That night, I overheard him through the wall, Diane's voice low and furious. Tom, he's ruining everything. We can't stay here with him lording this over us. Make him back off. Dad mumbled something, then said, he's got the law, Diane. What do you want me to do? She hissed, convince him to sell it. Split the money. We'll move somewhere else, start fresh. My blood ran cold. Sell my house? The one Mom's parents built? The one I grew up in? No way in hell. Next day, Dad tried it. Caught me in the garage, tinkering with my bike. Ethan, he said, leaning on the workbench, what if we sold the place? You'd get a good chunk of college money, a fresh start. We could all move on. I dropped my wrench, the clang echoing. Move on? This ain't just a house, Dad. It's all I've got left of Mom, of Grandma and Grandpa. You'd let her take that too. He flinched, like I'd hit him. I'm trying to fix this, son. I shook my head. You're trying to fix it for her. I'm not selling. They pay or they go. That's it. Diane didn't take it quiet. By dinner, she'd rallied Travis and Haley, 3 against 1. We're not paying you a dime, she spat across the table. This is our home too. I leaned forward, voice steady. Legally, it ain't. You've got 30 days to decide. Travis shoved his plate away. Screw this. I'm out of here. Haley nodded, smirking. Yeah, good luck living alone, loser. Diane stood, dramatic as hell. Tom, we're leaving unless he apologizes and drops this. Dad looked at me, pleading. Ethan, please. I didn't blink. They made their choice. So have I. That was the breaking point. Diane packed bags that night, hers, Travis's, Haley's. Dad just watched, torn, but he didn't stop him. By morning, they were gone, peeling out in Diane's SUV. The house went silent, and I felt it, relief, mixed with something hollow. Dad stayed, though. Sat me down later, voice shaky. I messed up, Ethan. I should have seen it. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. It wasn't fixed, but it was a start. O's first few days after they left. It was just me and Dad rattling around, trying to figure out what was left. The quiet was nice, no slamming doors, no whining, no mess I had to clean up. But it was heavy too. Dad barely talked, just shuffled between work and the couch, staring at the TV without really watching. I could tell he was chewed up inside, caught between losing Diane and facing what he'd let happen to me. I spent that week cleaning out their crap. Travis's room, empty soda cans, game discs, a busted chair he'd never fixed. Haley's den of hair ties, crumpled clothes, a cracked mirror she'd blamed me for. Diane's stuff was everywhere, those ugly figurines, her perfume still stinking up the bathroom. I boxed it all, dumped it on the porch, and texted Dad to tell her to pick it up. She did, 2 days later, rolling up with Travis in tow, both of them glaring like I'd burned their world down. I didn't say a word, just watched him load it and go. Good riddance. School kept me busy, football season was winding down, and I had college apps to finish. I'd been accepted to a state school 2 hours away, decent engineering program, partial scholarship. The house stay mine. I wasn't selling, no matter what. Dad and I talked about it one night over pizza, first real sit-down we'd had since the blowout. You gonna be okay here alone when I'm at school? I asked, picking at a slice. He nodded, slow. Yeah, I'll manage. You need this, Ethan, your own path. I looked at him, saw the lines in his face. What about you and Diane? He sighed, setting his beer down. She's staying with her sister. Says she's done unless I make you sell. I told her no. That's that. I didn't push it. Part of me wanted to ask if he'd fight for her, but I didn't. He'd picked me, finally, and that was enough for now. We started fixing things, little stuff, like the leaky sink Mom used to nag him about. or the porch swing that had half collapsed. It wasn't much, but it felt like us again, just the two of us against the world, like before Diane showed up. Graduation came fast. I walked the stage, got my diploma, and looked out at the crowd. Dad was there, front row, clapping loud, a real smile on his face, not the fake one he'd worn with Diane. My buddy Jake's family was there too, hooting and hollering, making me feel like I mattered. Diane, Travis, Haley? Nowhere in sight. Didn't expect him, didn't want him. After, Dad took me to the diner, our old spot from when I was a kid. Proud of you, son, he said over burgers. You stood up. Took guts. I shrugged, but it felt good hearing it. Summer rolled in, and I prepped for college. Rented the house out to a young couple, nice folks, early 30s, with a baby on the way. They signed a lease, $1,200 a month, enough to cover my dorm, and then some. I stopped by before leaving. Saw him painting the nursery, laughing in the kitchen. The place felt alive again, not weighed down by all the crap from the last few years. I packed my truck, clothes, my bike, a box of Mom's old photos, and hit the road. Dad hugged me goodbye, tight, like he didn't want to let go. Call me, all right, he said. Yeah, Dad. You too. And now, writing this from my dorm at State, 2 hours from that house I fought so hard for. It's been 3 months since I left, and I'm settling in. Classes are tough. Engineering's no joke. But I'm keeping up. The rent money comes in steady, and with my scholarship, I've got breathing room. No more scraping by, no more carrying anyone else. Just me, building something new. The house is good. Renters send me pics sometimes, little updates. They fixed the front steps, planted flowers where Mom's old garden used to be. I visited once, just to check in, and heard their kid giggling through the screen door. It hit me then. The place wasn't haunted anymore, not by Diane, not by the past. It was a home again, even if I wasn't living there. Dad's holding up. He's still in that apartment he rented after Diane left, working his supervisor job. Last I heard, Diane's still with her sister, Travis got a part-time gig at a warehouse, and Haley's bouncing between friends' couches, posting selfies like nothing's changed. Dad calls sometimes, short talks, weather, work, house, school. He doesn't mention her much, but I can tell it's over. He sent me a package last week, Mom's recipe box, the one Diane shoved in a closet. Thought you'd want this, his note said. I do. Makes me feel like she's still around, in a good way. Late at night, I'll flip through those old photos, me and Dad fishing when I was 6, Mom laughing in her apron, flower on her nose. One sticks with me. Me on his shoulders, reaching for the oak tree's lowest branch. He's grinning, eyes bright, the Dad I used to know. He's different now, quieter, worn, but he's trying. Maybe he'll figure it out, see what he lost picking Diane over me. Maybe he won't. Either way, I'm not waiting on him anymore. Letting go's hard, but it ain't weakness. It's power I didn't know I had till I stood up and took my life back. That house, those years, they shaped me, but they don't own me. I'm here, 19, free, with a future I'm building myself. And for the first time, that's enough.